Welcome everybody, and thank you so much for joining this kickoff of the mentorship program for 2023, which will go into 2024. Ben Kenny is my name, and I've been given the privilege of being able to help guide things today as MC to a certain extent. I'd like to start by acknowledging that ANZAHPE acknowledges and pays its respect to the traditional owners of the lands upon which we are meeting. I'm personally meeting on Kaurna country. And acknowledge the role that those people play in sustenance of the land which we have the privilege to work, but also the waters in the sky and the general health as well. ANZAHPE also acknowledge the Maori people as tangata whenua and the Treaty Waitangi partners in Aotearoa, New Zealand. So with that, I'll hand over to Julie, acknowledging Julie as being a driving force behind this whole exercise. Over to you, Julie. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Welcome, everybody. Delighted to have you on board, and I hope that you're going to enjoy this one-year mentorship program, whether you're a mentor or a mentee. Start with just quick introductions of the mentorship team. So I'm Julie Ash, long-term membership and ANZAHPE.
Ben Kenny, ANZAHPE member and fellow, and also former president, and I'm working at the University of Adelaide.
Adrian Shu, and I'm retired but still a fellow of ANZAHPE and try to support the organisation as much as I can.
Joanna Tai, at Deakin University, recently com member and hoping to be a fellow soon. Once I get my paperwork in.
Reminder for all of us. Megan.
Kia ora, Megan Anakin at the University of Otago. I'm Vice President of ANZAHPE this year.
Thanks, Julie. Hi, Liz Malloy. I am a fellow of ANZAHPE and also on the fellowship committee, and was in part of this mentorship scheme last year, also at the University of Melbourne.
And also to include Charlotte Denniston, who is an associate fellow and a very keen mentor and everything to do with mentorships. Okay, so first we're going to give you some perspectives on mentorship, and then Liz is going to talk about intellectual candor, which we think is a very central component. We're going to hear of a mentorship experience from our last one-year program from Adrian Shu. We're going to talk about the mentorship roles and relationships and what we have learned. Then on to establishing mentor relationships. What are our top tips that we've learned both from ourselves and also the evaluation we ran? And then some EOR time to talk about concerns and challenges, and some TIGA time to talk about what we're feeling inspired by, what our aspirations are, and then briefly into next steps. There will be a Padlet, and the address is in the chat, I think. When you need to use the Padlet, we'll prompt you. But it might be worth, meanwhile, having a go at opening it. Okay, so the mentorship program structure, obviously there's registration, and at the moment there's a pairing process going on. Thank you, Joe. Obviously this is the launch of the workshop. This is being recorded, so people who can't attend today can watch this presentation. The thing to happen after the workshop is that you will be given your paired mentor or mentee, and you arrange your first meeting. This year we're hoping to make these a bit better matched in terms of people's locations, so it's possible that some of you might be able to meet face-to-face, but otherwise online. We're hoping to host 3 themed discussions, or we will do, in December, March and June. And that'll be an opportunity to focus on some particular issues around mentorship and share what we've learned and what we'd like to change and, brainstorm. At the end of the program, we'll hold a celebration, which will be September 2024. And of course, those who do the mentorship program will be recognised in the following conference. We'll also conduct program evaluation. If any of you need support during the mentorship year, the group that have just introduced themselves are available for you to contact, and there's also the website. Probably the easiest thing in any case is always to contact ANZAHPE office, who can direct you to the right place. So that would be Candor. Okay, so what are the goals of our program? First, to establish a culture of mentorship across ANZAHPE. We wish to build mentorship skills amongst the ANZAHPE members, and we want to enable mentees to achieve their goals. We want to inspire more members to engage with the ANZAHPE Fellowship to build future fellows and mentors. We wish to build the discipline of health professions education as experts in the art and the science of educating health professionals. And we want to foster a community of health professional education mentorship practice. Just a few small goals. What is our philosophy? Amongst us, we really believe that mentorship happens between a mentee and a mentor. It's not transactional, it's something you create between you. Each of you have an active role. The mentee is not passive, the mentee is actually the core of this relationship. And our mentors will be very much responding to our mentees, and the mentees should feel empowered to very much drive this relationship. What we learned in our last program was that where a mentee didn't feel able to be active in the mentorship partnering, things tended to taper off. No shame in that, we're busy people. All right, next. So just wanted to share with you some perspectives on mentorship, because we all come from different places, we have different professional cultures and different experiences. So a first perspective from Eric and others. Mentoring is a personal helping relationship between. That includes professional development and growth and varying degrees of support. I love that one because it's so simple, but it still captures the essence of what we're on about. Also, it can be a non-judgmental relationship in which individual mentor voluntarily gives time to support and encourage another. So that is the value for the mentee. The relationship is typically developed at a time of transition in a mentee's life and lasts for a significant and sustained period of time. Hence, our program is 1 year to really give you a substantial period of time. It can also be, within the health professions more specifically, a relationship that may vary along a continuum from informal, short-term, to formal and long-term, in which faculty with useful experience, knowledge, skills, wisdom offer advice, information, guidance, support, or opportunity to another faculty member, notice often a peer, or for students for that individual's professional development. And then the one that I really like, it's an enabling relationship that facilitates another person's growth and development. This relationship is dynamic, reciprocal, and can be emotionally intense. Within such a relationship, the mentor assists with career development and guides the mentee through the organisational, social and political networks in relation to the health profession context. So having shared those perspectives, you might want to reflect which suits you. It doesn't matter, and your perspective may change over the year. I just wish you all the best, and I look forward to meeting my mentee. And now I will hand on to Elizabeth.
Thank you, Julie. So one of the things we talked about as a group when we first established this particular scheme was this notion of intellectual candour within a partnership. And my colleague Margaret Bierman and I have done some research in this area, and we define intellectual candour as characterised by brainstorming, improvisation and disclosure for the purpose of one's own learning and the learning of others. So what might this look like? What is it? Well, essentially it's this idea of when you're in relationship with another, that you're verbalizing thinking with respect to a complex problem. There's an improvisational quality, so it's not planned and systematic. It really is it evolves. The discourse is often emergent, hesitant, fraught with the possibility of failure. It's revelatory rather than indulgent. And it's very much about speaking as thinking. And I think most of us who have been involved in mentoring interactions know that this is often really the spirit of that engagement. So when we talk about intellectual candor, we acknowledge that there is a tension, if you like, an exquisite tension between vulnerability and credibility. And this is where the magic happens. So we know when you think about when we're vulnerable, we are open to making new leaps in understanding. We know that we're more likely to co-construct knowledge with others. And as Julie said earlier, we really see this mentoring scheme about co-construction of knowledge, not about a senior person giving back to the community. So it's very much about co-construction of meaning. And we know that vulnerability often invites vulnerability. There's a sense that we learn through mistakes. And if you think about the theory, Jack Mesro's work around transformational learning really speaks to this idea of vulnerability. Now, the other flip side is that whenever we're being vulnerable, we're also thinking about what does this do around our credibility? And, you know, when we're vulnerable, it can expose us to being less than perfect. This can have negative consequences. It can lead to exploitation, sometimes legal threat, bullying, or dependence on others. It can also impact our professional status and career. And if we're thinking about the theoretical stance there, Goffman's face would be a good theory that would talk about this idea of credibility. Remembering that I can't control my own credibility, that is something that is ascribed to me by others. So when we're open, we are constantly balancing this idea between vulnerability and credibility. So one of the traps of being a mentor within a mentoring relationship is this idea of presenting your best shiny self. And so as teachers, sometimes we endeavour to present the best possible face to our learners, and who can blame us if in the process we present ourselves as clinical experts or authorities on a topic like health professions education. So just being mindful that when we are real and when we are authentic, that this really opens up a different type of energy within a mentoring relationship, and it can be very productive when that happens. What might it look like when you're in a relationship with a mentee or mentor? You might be saying, look, I haven't quite got a grip on this yet. I'm not sure. Look, I don't quite understand this, but what I'm thinking is, bear with me while I talk this through. Just an example of some of that emergent discourse that is not necessarily systematic and polished, like a slide deck in a lecture. So the last thing I'd say about a risk of intellectual candor is sometimes there is a intellectual Photoshop, or if you like, faux candor. And that is when we tell stories about things that have happened to us in the past, and it might make us look vulnerable, but we're not feeling vulnerable in sharing that information. So intellectual candor really is about being vulnerable for the sake of learning. And if it's faux candor, the other person tends to sniff that out fairly quickly. So it's really, I suppose I say that as an invitation to be authentic when you're having these discussions. And of course, we need to think about confidentiality is an important professional principle within the relationship. And just finally, that idea of Schulman, and I love this quote, that indeed the core values of professional communities like ANZAHPE revolve around the expectation that we don't keep secrets, whether of discovery or grounded doubt. So really an invitation there to share and generate knowledge through intellectual candor. And I think that would have benefits for both parties.
Well, I'll just like to share the short video just about the experience Yubeli and I had as a mentor and mentee. All right, Val, hello Yubeli, and just to introduce myself officially, I'm Adrian Shu, and I'm the mentor in the ANZAHPE mentoring program. And as a fellow of ANZAHPE, I have a broad experience in clinical as well as in academic work, so I'm quite privileged in that sense. And I'll here introduce my mentee.
Hi, so I'm Yubeli. I was the mentee. I'm a health profession education lead in diagnostic radiography. So it's been really exciting to be part of the mentoring program with Adrian.
And it's been a pleasure working together, Yuveli. And I think, as I mentioned before too, with the experience I had, and I'm very fortunate in that sense, I recognize a lot of issues you're going through. And I think it doesn't really matter what sort of discipline you are part of. There are so many similarities between the different disciplines in where they're going through and what you need to do, right? So tell me a little bit in all of that, and what for you was most helpful being part of the mentoring program?
I think there were lots of different, valuable lessons that I got out of it. I think during the program, I think initially at the very beginning, it was just really valuable to make connections outside of my own institution as well as outside of my discipline. I think sometimes we get a little bit protected within our own discipline. So it was a really good opportunity to meet an academic from outside of my own discipline as well. And having said that, it was also obviously just really valuable to learn about, your Adrian's professional experience and, the range and the different, experiences that you've had as part of your own education and research journey. So it was just really, really valuable to learn about, your own career as well. And I think I might have mentioned before, I think reflection plays such a big part, in a mentoring program. So I think from the initial discussions that we had, and definitely, the ongoing discussions during the entire length of the program, I just found it really useful, first of all, just to have that space to be able to reflect on and discuss with you my short-term goals, my long-term goals. And I think, Adrian was just really able to provide a really safe space to allow a really informal but really dedicated time for me to just critically reflect on the issues that were really important to me and that I wanted to discuss as well. So just being able to guide discussion points and doing something like this, obviously with an expert like Adrian, who had similar interests, but not necessarily obviously in the same field, but just was able to provide really good insights into similar experiences and problems. So having Adrian sharing the viewpoint, your similar experiences, and specifically, I think just the questions that were posed to me, they were just really, really useful as part of my own critical reflection, I think.
It is so important as well, having said that, that you also dare to be, well, basically exposing yourself in that sense, making yourself vulnerable as well, because I think indeed it is that environment where you can ask questions, but if you don't ask those questions, you won't learn it either. Even if you think, well, that is pretty basic, but it may be very basic, but I might make a fool of myself. But if you don't ask, you don't know.
Yeah.
Did you have problems with that, or did you find that that was not an issue for you?
Yeah, I didn't feel like it was such an issue. I think it was always just felt like a really safe space. I think because, maybe you had done this before. I felt like you had all of those skills to be a really knowledgeable person, but at the same time being really open as well with your own vulnerability. So I think that was really a really nice, safe environment.
It goes both ways, isn't it? Mentor and mentee, to be very honest, and being in that space where you can trust each other and can say those things. So just to be short, and in that sense, but where are you going from here?
Yeah, I think one of the really interesting things about being a mentee as part of the mentoring process has also been just being able to see the opportunities and the purpose of mentoring and having a mentor, just identifying the really good qualities of a mentor in the health profession fields. And perhaps just for me, just working towards being a better, formal or informal mentor myself to my colleagues. And of course, pushing that down to students as well to, allow them to see the really important role of mentoring in our professions as well.
Well, you answered my question too, because I was just going to see, do you see yourself as a mentor having gone through the process? So you have answered that quite nicely. So that's good. And it is about making a difference, and it is about listening and sharing your experiences and indeed developing a network, as you said right at the start. So thank you, Yuveli. I think, is there anything else you want to say?
No, just thank you. It's been a really, really wonderful opportunity.
Well, thank you so much for that, and it's been lovely just to have that relationship. So I wish you well, and hopefully we'll can indeed sometimes, as you say as well, make and step on the spot and just to reflect. That's so important, right? And using your network, all right?
Absolutely.
All right, thank you, Bella. Well, it was quite a pleasure, I think, indeed, to be a mentor. And there are still some slides that came out of it as well. And she is doing quite well academically as well, got a research grant and is on a good trajectory.
So getting started and establishing the mentorship, I think obviously the most important thing is initially to get to know with each other. So very much that first meeting is a meet and greet. It's very important that you share concepts of what mentorship means to each other. What were your previous experiences? What are your assumptions and expectations? I think for the mentee, discussing your aspirations and your goals, whether those are long-term, medium or short-term, and identifying then what might be focused on in the first instance, and discussing what the mentor hopes to bring to the mentorship so that you both have a sort of active and shared understanding between you. Practical things include agreeing on the meeting times, what your venue will be or via which medium, via Zoom or whatever, what your process is for agenda setting. It would be usual for the mentee to set the agenda, and ideally a mentee would send their agenda through just before the meeting to their mentor, but or you present that when you start. And then agreeing on what kind of record keeping you might want to do. It can be very valuable for a mentee and a mentor to keep some notes about what's happening. I found it really useful last time to be able to go back and look at the earlier parts of our process and help the mentee remind them about things that they may have discussed earlier that they may want to revisit, but also to see the progress. I think for the mentee to see the progress and to be so surprised that they were able to do so much in 1 year was really important. So that's something you can talk about. Now, who was presenting on top tips?
I think that was me, Julie.
Okay.
We generated some top tips, and I'm going to invite everyone who's present to add some tips into the chat, because we're not trying to say that we have all the answers. What might be a top tip for me will not be a top tip for Adrian or Julie. So we do know that communicating regularly, life changes. We're all at busy times of our lives. So keep channels open is our top tip. As Julie said, an agenda, even if it's in your mind, so that you can say, here are the 3 things I really want to talk to you about today. And also, we know that keeping some notes somehow is great. Feel free to add some in the chat. Now, and that's for mentors, listen. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. And I have to keep reminding myself, listen, listen. Be exploratory. Share the power, because there's always a power differential in a relationship as soon as we name the pieces, right? Mentor, mentee. So please level the playing field so that the person you're working with feels safe. I think Ben suggested that we only reflect back when necessary. Sometimes we do too much talking as mentors, and sometimes just listening is much more powerful. Make sure that you revisit the expectations, because in your first meeting, you might want to set some goals. What do you see? And then see how they progress. And then, of course, being really flexible. And then we realized that this is a bi-directional relationship. We really want it to be level. So we've come up with some top tips for both. And they are, Julie. I can't remember them off by heart, obviously. Oh, yeah. Except that the relationship might not work out. It's not quite as bad as being a teenager and dating, but not everyone meshes, right? And it's okay if, there's a personality issue or it just doesn't work. That's okay. we have to let our egos go. And as Liz Malloy told us, we've got to really engage with that intellectual candor if we feel we can. And if there's a problem, seek help. There's a whole fellowship here to support you. If it's a technical issue, the office can help get you in touch. And the members of this group are really here to support you in this journey, whether you're a mentor or mentee. And hopefully there's some tips coming up in here. All right. So don't make assumptions, Ben says, about the directions for either party. And feel free to get specialist advice, which is great. We aren't the experts, and none of us are, right? So we're not your only source, but hopefully we're a launch pad into your thinking. That's what we really want to be. And Shidhika says, please keep records. You never know. You and your mentee might want to write a scholarly article for FOPI about your experience. So if you have some records, you can, build something from that.
So the next bit is Eeyore and Tigger time, and rather than going on an expedition to the North Pole, I think there's just an opportunity for people to pop in any concerns or things that they're excited by and aspirations that they have. There's already been one good question from Deborah, if I don't mind naming her, about things that we might do. I think there's just a chance for us to know what the issues are. We won't necessarily be able to solve them today. So use that Padlet, and later on in the session, Joe will be giving a summary of what the Padlet comments are. I think I'll leave that there, and I think we should probably move to our workrooms.
Yep, we're going into breakout rooms. So everyone will have a facilitator in their breakout room. The facilitator are members of the presentation team. So as soon as Kendall or Jill open up the breakout rooms, we're going to head in there. Julie, do you want to show the second slide just so people know we're not just going to express worries? We want to have some inspiration too. So we'll see you in breakout rooms in just a moment.
Hi everyone, welcome back. So I have been tasked with summarizing what people have put into Padlet, but I actually think, like my group, we just had a delightful little discussion about some aspects of the program that perhaps didn't make it onto the written record. The first thing is about how, on the inspiration and aspiration side, is thinking about how this might work across the time period. I know Julie said that it was a year, but what's that going to look like? And maybe people might want to do mentorship on a different time frame. So that's certainly something that we can think about. And I know in my group, we also discussed a little about how that matching happens. And I'll let you in on a secret. I'm the person who does the matching, and I haven't started on that yet. And there were some suggestions about maybe offering mentees the option to pick people they're interested in. And I'm not sure. I'll have a think about it, but I was hoping to get it done sooner rather than later. So additional layers of interaction is going to make that a little bit more complex. But maybe I can think about something. And then on the concerns and challenges side, people in my group kind of said, I wasn't aware that we should have concerns or challenges. But I can see other people have contributed some things around the time management, flexibility, but also we are all in this space around perhaps balancing our health profession and our educator identities, and how does that work, and also in our careers. Just some things to think about, and maybe things you might like to discuss a little more with in your relationship, mentee-mentor relationship. And the other thing that I think came up that definitely isn't represented on the Padlet is concerns around what if the relationship isn't going so well. And obviously this might be something that is apparent immediately, or might be something that you realize over time across meetings, and perhaps the both of you might feel that together. And so we don't have a particular procedure or anything, but if you do have any questions, queries, or anything else, please let the ANZAHPE office know, as Julie said earlier, and we will figure out what to do from there. So I think that is pretty much my time up, and I am passing over to Ben to close the session.
Thanks a lot. So a couple of things. One is there is now an opportunity for people to provide any feedback they wish to, and that can be done via the link that Kendall has put into the chat, and also the link that appears there, though it's not easy for people to click on that. The concept of what happens when the relationship doesn't work came up in our group as well, Joe, and I was wondering if, as a mentor, as a sort of organisational group, we have to think about what processes we need to provide people with support to do that. What happens when that happens, and so I think that's an important thing. And does anyone want to provide any verbal feedback about the session, or burning things that we haven't picked up on that they want to make sure that we do think about?
Maybe, Ben, I can say something about when it doesn't work, because I've saw it in the chat coming up as well. And I suppose indeed we can develop things, but it comes again back to being transparent and honest. And I think if it is an honest relationship, mentioning as a mentee to the mentor, it's not working for me, this is what I had in mind. And I think the first step, I think in my view, would be to discuss it with the mentor, because the mentor is well linked with the organization, with ANZAHPE, and finding another one, and otherwise that can be a second step and so on. But I think it is important, I think, to be really honest about it and to discuss that and to both agree, no, it's not working as it could, or what we anticipated.
Yeah, I've got to admit.
Oh, sorry.
Please.
I was going to say, if I can build on that, for the mentors too, don't forget you can reach out and get advice from the broader mentorship group. What we discussed was that we get busy, and although we can do our best time management, sometimes there's a need for flexibility. So whether you're the mentee or the mentor, if you find yourself feeling that you can't maintain the commitment, say something, deal with it right there and then. There were some mentees who needed a bit of a break. I had one who needed to take a couple months off, and that was fine. And I think communicating it is critical, because otherwise you take time off and then you're kind of feeling a bit embarrassed, and you feel like you can't come back. So, you can agree to have 3 months off. We're fine with that. You've still got 9 months of mentorship, and a lot happens in that 3 months that you can get together and reflect on. So just keep the communication lines going.
Good comment, Julie. Another comment I'd add is that sometimes when I'm faced with conundrums about how to manage situations, I say, what would a grown-up do? And try and adopt that role. And sometimes
very good strategy.
Sometimes when you do that, you find out what you've been agonizing about is actually not as hard by a bit of that intellectual candor that Liz was talking about beforehand.
Yeah.
And another misnomer maybe perhaps as well, and that's talking about when a relationship doesn't work, is, you don't, there's a misnomer basically really that you need a mentor from your own discipline, because I mean, we all talk the same language within the same discipline, and sometimes it is really can be very helpful to have somebody outside your discipline, because the challenges are similar, regardless what discipline you are.
Yep. Okay, any other comments that people wanted to say? You can see the mentorship group can't shut themselves up. We're not looking to completely dominate, but we're just so committed and excited by this opportunity that you as potential mentees have given us, is why we can't stop ourselves.
There are just a few final slides that we need to go through, Ben.
Thanks a lot.
There are references, if Julie advances the slide, about Candor from Liz, which are really helpful. The next slide is other references that people new to mentorship might appreciate reading. Yeah. And then we also have some upcoming events that we want to let you know about. The first is our online program continues. We have 3 more events this year. We might even have something in December for you. You never know. We're always cooking up new stuff. So please feel free to join us for How Do I Get Started Creating a Culturally Safe Environment for Students? We have a masterclass in October. How do I embed empathy and compassion in my learning environment? And in November, how do I increase my chance of getting published? Learn some secrets there.
Exciting.
In
Step
2
1,
weeks.
submit.
Yeah.
In 2 weeks, APIN has its 4th member networking workshop. We're very proud to have Dr. Priya Martin come talking to us about rural IPE research and how to propel that and fuel that. So please come join us. It's open to members and non-members. So please share that among your next works. And finally, I'm really proud as the conference lead to be starting promoting our ANZAHPE Conference 2024. We're going to be cultivating innovation together in Adelaide this year. So expect mid-November for the conference website to open up, and we're going to encourage you to come join us there. And finally, last but not least, thank you for joining us today in our 2nd mentorship program. Last words go to Julie, who's been our wonderful lead. We couldn't do it without you, Julie.
Oh, thank you, Megan. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Good on you.
Which reminds me to say that we could not run these workshops at all if we didn't have the support of Candor and also Jill. And we're always very grateful to us because they are the ducks paddling underneath and very important. So I'll stop sharing so you can all see everybody's happy faces. And I wish you all a very happy rest of the day.
Thanks,
See you.
Julie.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.